Hey, so obviously I'm trying something a little different today. One time, when I was living in Arizona, I wanted to make a sandwich. Yeah, not just randomly, but I was hungry. And also, my cooking skill, not so great. I can make an egg salad. Not a potato salad, just an egg salad. And I'd gone to the grocery store the day before, like a grown-up. So, sandwich. Wanted to eat some food. My food. So anyway, I'm pulling the sandwich fixings from the fridge, and there's a problem. No mayo. Okay. That's strange because I knew I had bought mayonnaise the day before. I mean, I was very clear about this. And my memory has always been, excellent. So where was the damn mayonnaise? I checked again, checked, no mayonnaise. Still no mayonnaise, right? Different shelf? No. Hiding? No. I mean, all there was in my fridge was, sandwich fixings, eggs, and beer. So, did somebody steal my mayonnaise? See this look on my face? Yeah, I knew it was a ridiculous idea. I mean, not entirely ridiculous, right? My friend Doug, when he was a kid, somebody broke into his house, and while they were robbing it, they took a dump on the sofa. People do stuff. So it's not inconceivable that somebody could break into my apartment, take the time to go through my fridge, and, just take the mail. So, I turned around to look into the living room, and all my stuff was still there, right? TV, PlayStation, Xbox, movies, video games, right? Yeah. Damn. Guess I just remembered wrong. So I turned back into the kitchen, and there's my mayonnaise sitting on the counter. So, third option. Right. I tend to talk to myself, and I had already gotten the mayonnaise out of the fridge. All right. So, the sandwich ended up being okay. Ham and cheddar, mayo and mustard, white bread, whatever. That's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is, logical thinking, logical fallacies. Because, this story, it serves that purpose. You'll see. So, Bayesian inference is a systematic method for using statistics to think about pretty much anything you can gather evidence on. So, science and history, right? It's kind of a complicated mathematical doohickey, but you can get a pretty good understanding of it even without having to worry about all the math. Unless you want to be a great scientist or historian, in which case you kind of have to worry about the math. So I was looking for the mayonnaise, and I was considering two possibilities. Either I had forgotten to buy mayonnaise or somebody had broken into my home and stolen my mayonnaise. One of the things that Bayes looks at is prior probabilities. Okay? So regardless of the evidence you're looking at, how likely is your hypothesis just based on past events? For similar events, things like this that have happened, how often has it been the case that X has happened in the past? So in this case, how often has it happened that a person couldn't find the mayonnaise and it turned out they forgot to buy it at the grocery store? How often did it turn out that somebody had broken into their home and stolen their oily, eggy condiment, right? So remember that look on my face? Okay, that weird, incredulous look? That's because the prior probability for theft is incredibly low. I mean, theft is pretty uncommon. That they would then go into the fridge, right? Okay, is even more unlikely. So I knew I was really reaching, trying to come up with that hypothesis. Basically, I had so much confidence in my memory that I was willing to say that me misremembering something was as unlikely as someone breaking into my home and stealing my mayonnaise. Now, before you make fun of me for having that much confidence, remember how the story ended. I was right about that part, so go me. Okay. Now, the other factor, or an other factor, in Bayesian inference is how likely is the evidence given your hypothesis? Does your hypothesis predict this particular set of evidence? Well, both hypotheses here, theft and mismemory, predict an absence of mayonnaise. So they're going to have equal probabilities there. So what you have to do, in a proper historical or scientific fashion, you need to gather more evidence. And the proper thing to do is to try and falsify your hypothesis. Okay? So if you gather evidence that would be true under your model, you supported your model. But you haven't proven the other hypothesis false. Okay? You need to try and prove something false. You need to look for evidence to eliminate one or more models. That's why I turned around and looked into my living room. If a whole lot of my stuff had been missing, then I would have been able to increase my confidence in that someone stole my mayonnaise model. Instead, no theft. So I had to drastically decrease my confidence in that model. I mean, while it's understandable for someone to break in, take some of my stuff, and also go through my fridge, it really, really doesn't make sense for somebody to break in and only steal my mayonnaise. Still not impossible, but really, definitely, ridiculously, incredibly improbable. Whereas the hypothesis that I simply forgot to buy mayonnaise predicts, that my stuff should still be around. So I can stick with that one, right? And then next up, this little story illustrates, the fallacy of the false dichotomy, the false dilemma, black and white fallacy. Okay, there were more than two possibilities, right? A dichotomy is just two things offered as a contrast, or two possibilities. A false dichotomy is when two things are offered as the only two possibilities when they're not. Okay? In my story, I only looked at two possibilities, theft versus misremembering. There were other possibilities, like absent-mindedness. Religious fundamentalists love to offer up false dichotomies. Now, apologies for not attacking whatever religion you happen to dislike, but I'm most familiar with Christianity and its nonsense apologetics. So anyway, Christian creationists love to offer up the false dichotomy that either evolution is true or biblical literalism is true. Then they spend all their time attacking evolution badly instead of coming up with evidence in support of creationism, because they can't. In addition to their logic and evidence in support of creationism being garbage within this dichotomy, the dichotomy itself is garbage. Evolution, as we currently understand it, versus fundagelical Christianity aren't the only two possibilities. Even if they managed to tear down part of the theory of evolution, that would reduce the answer to I don't know, not Jesus riding a dinosaur. So, anyway, I'd like to use this story to illustrate, or to attack, I should say, one of the golden calves of internet skepticism. Anecdotes aren't evidence. That saying finds its origin in debating people who believe in ghost stories and UFOs and the like, where it's important to remember that people can honestly report bad information. Of course, the internet skeptical and atheist community has also found this to be a useful cudgel for attacking women, queer folks, people of color, and other minorities who are trying to report their lived experiences of oppression and marginalization. The problem is that anecdotes are evidence. So my story is evidence of a number of things. I actually do have a good memory, that I'm absent-minded when I'm engaged in mindless tasks, that I, like anyone else, will reach for an absurd hypothesis rather than admit to a personal failing, that I, like very few people, will seek out evidence to falsify my hypothesis rather than try to confirm it. That I, like very few people, will admit to a personal failing when confronted with good evidence that my hypothesis is false. And that I kind of like sandwiches. Okay, and so on. You can get a lot of things out of that little story, right? Like I'm a humble guy who is willing to admit to a personal failing. Now, the reason we don't accept anecdotal accounts of ghosts and UFOs isn't because those anecdotes aren't evidence. It's because they're not good evidence of the claim. Okay? The prior probabilities are quite low. Okay? But they are perfectly good evidence that some sort of phenomenon is occurring. Okay? We've got a lot of these stories. They have a lot of things in common. There's something going on. Now, it's not reasonable to accept that ghosts and alien encounters are real based on that evidence. because we have no supporting evidence. But it's perfectly reasonable to do investigations to find out what is actually happening. And that's why skeptics did exactly that. So, a significant number of skeptics spent decades investigating reports of ghosts and aliens and demons and miracles and all that crap, and have repeatedly found those stories to be evidence of weaknesses in human perception and memory. So, the people using anecdotes aren't data as an argument are assholes arguing in bad faith. When we investigate claims of harassment and racism, of oppression and marginalization, of sexism and abuse, we don't find that those claims are bogus. We find that those claims are good, that those experiences are incredibly common, that those people are honestly reporting things that have actually happened. In other words, the phenomenon those stories are reporting is a phenomenon that is occurring in the world, and not some failure in human perception. So, when people start getting into an argument about what's going on out there, ask yourself, where's the mayonnaise? Look for evidence to disprove hypotheses and not to support them. Try not to reach for absurdities. And for God's sake, believe people when they tell you they've been hurt. Okay? Even if you'd rather not believe it. Even if they're telling you that the person who hurt them is someone you love or respect. Even if they're telling you the one who hurt them is you. Okay, now this wouldn't be much of a YouTube video if I didn't go ahead and ask. Please like, share, subscribe, be my internet friend. See you around.